We are Team Soul Food, and this is our post-launch quick look. The mission of Project Soul Food is to create a near-space sun-tracking satellite to study the basics of flight mechanics, in-flight orientation, and the potential for near-space sun-tracking solar panels.
As you can see from our CONOPS diagram, our experiment was to track the sun using a mechanical system, luminosity sensors, and a compass sensor to determine the orientation and reorient towards the sun throughout the duration of the flight. We initially thought we'd have a greater window to track the sun in, but since it was an early morning launch, we had a smaller window to work with. Our data was chaotic during the ascent stage of our flight, yet we reached a point where we had basic equilibrium, where it was transferring from around 360 degrees heading back down to zero and until burst. And back during burst, it went back into a chaotic and erratic state of data.
Starting with the luminosity versus time graph, we can see the initial ascent where the values read by the luminosity sensors are all pretty much all over the place, scattered, and that means the balloon sat was spinning around and all the sensors were reading different values at different times. In the middle there's a red line at the top, which is the luminosity sensor that we want facing towards the sun, so it's reading the highest values. And then there's the blue area near the bottom, as well as a pretty solid green line. And those are the other two luminosity sensors that weren't facing towards the sun. Then around 107 minutes we can see burst, and again after burst the balloon side is spinning around and the luminosity sensors are reading scattered values as it's spinning. Heading versus time, you can see pretty much the same thing. Initial ascent, it's very erratic, lots of noise. In the middle there's a pretty quiet area where the balloon sat was more stable, and then you can see burst and descent. Pressure versus time looked exactly how we wanted it to. Pressure increasing until burst, pressure decreasing until burst, and then at burst increasing greatly. Temperature versus time also looks exactly how we wanted it to. You can see burst around 107 minutes. Both of the acceleration graphs, you can see periods of noise towards the beginning and the end, and then again the quiet period in the middle. And then the humidity versus time is...
We have two main failures that actually affect our data. The first one is inefficient adjustment in lower altitude. So based on our data that we collected from both luminosity sensors and compass sensors, we can indicate that there was a significant delay in the motion adjustment. That's why it caused the balloon set spinning around. And because we can see the data from compass sensor, it's just like a square, which means at the beginning and after the burst, there's a significant just bad spinning happened during that period of time. And then we did try to reduce the delay in the code before launch, but it doesn't happen somehow because it just keeps showing us errors when we try this. So in order to prove that, we can rebuild the wings and redo the wind tunnel test. And so we can just have if we have the similar data and if we can visually see the balloon set spinning around, then we can prove that the failure is just due to the delay of the servo. And the second one is luminosity sensors data has been stored into different folders, which is not what we want. I think that's a code failure. We didn't try to write down the we didn't store it in the right way, so that way all the data are distributed to different documents. So when we do the graph, we got to put everything together, and somehow that might affect the accuracy of our data.
Most of the rest of the time our team has together will consist of analyzing the code. First, we are going to compare the magnetometer data along with the video of the flight and also the accelerometer data to get a picture of how the balloon sat turned throughout the flight. And this is to see how well the mission was successful or not, and to actually see if the fin system worked. We will also take this and add it to the luminosity sensor data to see if the luminosity sensors actually read values as we expected them to when it was facing the sun or not. And then we will take graphs of each of the sensors, including the basic ones like the accelerometer, the thermometers, the barometers, and the humidity sensors. The thermometer sensor will be particularly interesting to compare with our cold test. And besides that, we have to rebuild the one wing. To do this, we need foam core and balsa wood. We should have all of this. Besides that, we need to create our Rev D, our final presentation, our presentation for the expo, and do our community service. We think that this will take about 15 hours outside of class.